am so ready for spring. I've done some spring nail colors. I've got my spring colored sweater on. I've got some flowers out. I was kind of inspired by an Easter egg today. That's just the color palette that I was going for because I really want spring to come. I want warmer spring weather, and I say this as it's snowing outside, and not just a little bit, a snowstorm. It's been snowing since last night and still going, and we're well into the afternoon, and it shows no signs of stopping, and I'm ready for winter to be over, and as I said, for warmer weather to arrive. But since there's nothing I can do about that at the moment, today I'm going to be doing a Disney Flashback video for you. We are up to 1981 and we're going to be talking about The Fox and the Hound. As I was sitting down to watch this movie, I could only recall seeing it maybe once as a kid, if at all. Evidently, it is based on a book by Daniel P. Mannix. As far as the adult characters go, the voice of Todd was done by Mickey Rooney and the voice of Copper by Kurt Russell, and I did not know that, so that was interesting to find out in the beginning. This one began with a more updated opening credit sequence. We see the title right away and there's no music playing. The credits come up on screen and we see the woods in the background. We hear birds chirping as well as frogs. Then we see a fox running, carrying a baby, and dogs barking in the distance, chasing them. This started off real sad. Think Bambi. The mother fox hides her baby and then runs in the other direction so that the dogs won't get him. But as she is running over a hill, you hear a gunshot. An owl was up in the trees and sees everything happen. She goes to the baby fox, who is frightened. She tells him, "It's all right. Big Mama's here." Then she continues, "You know, you're going to need some caring for." He looks to her thinking she means herself, and then she says, "No, no, not Big Mama." Then she thinks about it for a moment and tells him not to move and she'll be back. She flies off to find a woodpecker and another bird. They're friends, but I couldn't identify exactly what type of bird the other bird was. It was smaller. She tells them she needs their help. The three of them try to think of someone to take care of the fox. They go to an old lady's house and they grab some of her laundry off of the clothesline that's hanging outside. So she'll follow them and they lead her right to the baby fox. She takes him in and takes care of him. They refer to the woman as Widow Teed. She's feeding the fox and says, "You're such a little toddler. That's what I'm going to call you, Todd." Then she tells him, "I'm not going to be lonesome anymore." Already, this movie was tugging at my heart. The very same day, an old man named Amos brings home a puppy. He says he'll make a great hunting dog someday. He introduces him to his older dog, Chief, and tells him he's in charge of looking after the puppy now. Chief is not too sure at first, but he and the puppy quickly bond. Todd is out one day trying to catch a butterfly. At the same time, the Hound is learning how to catch a scent. They are both still young at this point. They run into each other and Todd asks, "What you smelling?" The Hound says, "I'm trying to catch the scent." Todd replies, "Of what?" Then the Hound says, "You." Todd asks, "Why do you do that?" The Hound tells him, "To find what we've been tracking." Todd says, "I'm a fox, Todd." The dog responds, "Name's Copper. I'm a hound dog." Then Todd asks if he can play hide and seek. Big Mama sees them from her tree and says, My, a fox and a hound playing together." Then she sings a sweet, sad song about them. Neither one of them understands the way the world works, and that they are supposed to be enemies. They just like playing together. The next part was sweet and got to my emotions once again. They say they are the very best friends, and that they will be best friends forever. At this point, I got the feeling that this movie was going to make me cry. Copper's owner gets annoyed with him running off, so he ties him up. Todd goes to find him, wondering why he didn't come out to play. Copper says his master wants him to stay home. So Todd says, "That's okay, we can play here." Copper explains about Chief and how that might not be a good idea. Todd goes to investigate Chief while he is sleeping, not realizing the danger of what he is doing. Copper again tries to warn him. Then Chief wakes up and starts chasing Todd. It causes a lot of commotion and Amos comes out with his gun. Todd sees his owner driving away, so he chases after her car. Amos drives after him, still shooting. Everyone comes to a halt, and Amos and the widow Teed get in an argument. Amos warns, "If I ever see that fox on my property again, I'll shoot it, and this time I won't miss." Later, Amos is taking Chief and Copper on a hunting trip so they can teach Copper how to hunt. He says they'll be gone until spring. And I imagine that at this point it must be summer because then we go through fall and winter before getting to spring. Next, you see Copper and Todd staring at each other as Copper rides away. Later, Big Mama is trying to teach Todd a little bit about surviving because he needs to learn. Todd tells her, "Copper would never hunt me down. He's my best friend." She replies, "Best friend indeed. Copper's going to do what he's been told to do." She tells him about education or elimination and turns it into a song. Eventually he says to her, "You mean Copper is going to be my enemy?" The birds tell him to follow them, and they take him to a shed on Amos's property and tell him to take a good look. They show him all kinds of animal furs that have been hung up on the wall. Todd says, "That's awful, those poor things." Big Mama tells him Copper is going to come back a trained hunting dog, a real killer. Todd cannot believe it. He says, "Not my friend Copper, he won't ever change." Big Mama says, "I hope you're right, Todd." Then he says, referring to Copper, "We'll be friends forever, won't we, Big Mama?" She answers him by saying, "Forever is a long time, and time has a way of changing things." Copper and Todd are grown now, and Copper sees Todd returning. He's excited. He's talking to Big Mama, and she points out to him the back of the truck and says, "Look at that pile of skins he helped get." Todd says, "I know he's a hunting dog now," and she says, "You're a fox." He tells her, "That doesn't matter. He will be happy to see me." She tells him, "Don't get your hopes up too high." He says, "Don't worry, I'll be careful." Todd goes to see Copper when everyone is asleep. Copper is happy to see him, but tells him he shouldn't come over there. He's going to get them both in a lot of trouble. Todd says, "I just wanted to see you. We're still friends, aren't we?" Copper tells him, "Todd, those days are over. I'm a hunting dog now." Todd is crushed. Then Copper says, "You better get out of here before Chief wakes up." Todd says, Chief, he doesn't worry me." Copper tells him, "He should. You're fair game as far as he's concerned." Then Chief wakes up and starts barking. Amos comes to the door with his gun, ready to shoot Todd. Widow Tweed hears the commotion and runs out, worried, to see what happened. She says, "They're after Todd." Then we come to a defining moment. Todd hides, and Chief keeps running, but Copper sniffs Todd out. His master's calling to him, and he's thinking about what to do. He says, "Todd, I don't want to see you get killed." Then he says, "I'll let you go this one time," and lets him escape. But then Chief finds him. They are on a train track, and the train comes. Chief falls from the tracks down below. Todd is up on top where the tracks are after the train's gone by, looking down at where Chief fell. Copper goes down to see if Chief is okay. And when he looks up, he sees Todd and tells him, "If it's the last thing I do, I will get you for this." Todd is then reunited with his owner, Amos shows up at her house and tries to barge in. She stops him from doing so, but he tells her, "That fox of yours almost killed Chief. I'm gonna get him. You can't keep him locked up forever." Then we see her the next morning. On her mirror is a picture of Todd on his birthday, what I think was his first birthday, because if I remember correctly, he was wearing a number 1. It really made it apparent that he is her pet and her family, which made this next part all the more difficult. She puts him in her car and says a sweet rhyme about him. And that's when I lost it and tears started to flow. She puts him out in the wild and takes his collar off that she had given to him. Then, of course, they play a sad song. This particular section was heartbreaking. The fact that you knew she didn't really want to let him go, but she knew it was what was best for him in order to keep him safe. But it was hard knowing that they were both sad and going to be alone. And the music and lyrics just did not help matters. Then it shows Todd sitting in the rain, sad, alone, and uncertain of his surroundings. Big Mama once again tries to help out. She introduces Todd to a lady fox named Vixie. Vixie asks Todd to help her catch a fish. He wants to impress her, so he starts to gloat about how good at catching fish he is, even though he's never caught one in his life. Of course he can't do it, and everyone around him, including Vixie, starts laughing. This hurts his pride, so then he insults Vixie. Big Mama tells him, "That's no way to talk to Vixie." She tells him, "Just act natural." Then she sings him a song about affection and having a positive reaction. So he tries again with Vixie, using what he knows instead of trying to pretend to be somebody that he's not. Todd and Vixie bond, and Vixie gives him a tour of the forest, which is a nature preserve. Amos and Copper go to the game preserve, figuring that's where Widow Tweed would have taken him. And even though it says no hunting, Amos doesn't care and cuts through the fence and tells Copper to sniff him out. Then Amos sets a bunch of traps. I guess they are bear traps? I'm no hunting expert, so I don't know exactly, but that's what I would assume they are by the look of them. We see Vixie and Todd walking, but Vixie can sense something is off and doesn't want to go any further. She tells Todd to be careful. Somehow Todd manages to avoid the traps, but Amos was waiting for him, and he and Copper go chasing after Todd and Vixie. They manage to trap them in a tunnel, so Vixie and Todd try to go and hide in this little tunnel area. I don't know if it's like where they sleep at night, but that's where they go to try and hide. It was not a great choice because now one of them is on each side of the tunnel, so Copper's on one end, Amos is on the other. So there's really no way for them to get out. And to make it even more difficult for them, Amos sets fire to one side, so he takes up like some sticks or hay or something, lights it on fire, sticks it in one end of the tunnel, figuring that will force Vixie and Todd to go out the other direction where Copper is. And since he's so certain that that's the case, he runs around to join Copper, figuring they can't go out that way, there's fire. Todd and Vixie, they act very brave and run out the fire side, doing their best not to touch the fire, and start to run away. Copper chases them, but eventually loses the scent. The next thing you know, a bear appears. Amos gets stuck in a trap and he cannot move, and Copper tries to fight the bear to protect Amos. The bear is about to kill Copper, and Todd comes back to try and help him because he hears Copper yelping basically and this bear growling, so he goes back to try and help. Todd and Copper manage to survive against this bear attack, but then sure enough, good old Amos shows up ready to shoot Todd. Some thanks, if it weren't for Todd, he and Copper would probably both be dead. Copper steps in front of Todd as if to say, "No, he's my friend and he saved me. You won't harm him." As Copper is leaving with Amos to go home, Todd and Copper smile at each other, and that moment got to me as well. In the end, Widow Tweed is taking care of Amos, bandaging his leg. They seem to have formed a friendship, or at the very least, they can tolerate each other now. The movie ends with Todd and Vixie on a hill overlooking the two farms. So the two farms of Amos and Widow Tweed are next door to each other. So the farm where Copper now lives and Todd used to live, he and Vixie are on a hill overlooking that at the end of the movie. So it kind of all brings it together. After watching this, I don't think I had seen it as a kid. I'm sure I heard about it or maybe have caught scenes here and there, but I don't think I ever watched the full movie. And I can kind of understand why, because I think it would have been a tough one to watch as a kid, seeing as I had a hard enough time now as an adult. As far as Disney movies go, I really enjoyed it, despite the sad parts. If you haven't seen it, or it has been a while, I recommend it, but have some tissues ready. Overall, it was a good story. I hope that you enjoyed this Disney flashback of The Fox and the Hound. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and hopefully spring will be here by the next Disney video that I do, I can hope anyway. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a magical day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!